Hey, Cesare, just a second here. Hey, Cesare.
Oh, hi. Hello, Monir.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. So yeah, we had a great session, and I think we'll talk about that because we need also some elements from our previous
Mhm.
session with you. So to talk about what we will talk today. But maybe first, if you can just introduce yourself again for people that don't know you, introduce your company so that maybe they can also get in contact with you if they have any needs.
Sure. My name is Cesare Magri, and my company is Beyond Clinical, and we provide clinical services for the certification of medical and in vitro diagnostic devices. So, clinical evaluation, performance evaluation, post-market clinical follow-up, help with now in Germany with the DIGA process, and many more things. So, if you have questions or you need help with the intended purposes or clinical aspects of the certification, please contact us.
Yeah. So I had interviewed Stefan Bollinger on the podcast for DIGA. If
Mhm.
you want to know what is DIGA, so it's a specific law in Germany for
Mhm.
medical device applications, and it's really an interesting topic also. Okay, so yeah, we have people on the live, so thank you for joining. So Cesare, so can you introduce a bit of what we'll discuss today?
Yes.
And
So.
we have prepared some slides
Mhm.
that I will show. And we have also prepared some examples that are also coming from the MDCG 2020-1. But we will try to do a live examples also for people so that they see, if I can say, the principle of all that. The objective is really that they understand how to do what we'll teach today.
Mhm.
So Cesare.
So this is a fairly recent guideline, so from the MDCG 2021, and they provide indications for the clinical evaluation of medical software. So the interesting thing of this guideline is that it's not just MDR relevant.
Yeah.
It's also sorry, I say it in German.
IVDR.
IVDR relevant. And we noticed the effort in this guideline actually to bring some terminology and some thoughts that were common in the in vitro diagnostic performance evaluation. They try to take it and also use it for the medical devices. This leads sometimes to a couple of conflict in names. That's why we will see they had to develop a couple of new names, but I
Okay.
think it's an interesting guideline, and it's definitely gonna come into operation in some months, also from the notification body. So it's worth keeping in mind.
So can we tell to people who should really try to follow this guideline? Which medical device company should do that?
Yes. So if you have a software that is a medical device or an in vitro diagnostic device on its own, so that means that the software itself has a medical claim, then this guideline is for you. So this is not a guideline intended for software that is like a small part of for controlling a medical device. That's something 62 304. And
Yeah.
so this is really for the case in which you have, I don't know, a software app, a software on a website or an application for the PC that is used by doctor, and that is either a medical device or in vitro diagnostic device. As we see, I mean, it's the concept that they introduce here really work for both cases. If you want to assess whether your software is mainly a medical device or a in vitro diagnostic device, then you have to check the other guideline from 2020 on the software classification. So medical device software classification, there they have a very nice diagram and a very nice decision chart that you can use to really say, okay, it's I have to use sorry, I always say it in German.
IVDR.
IVDR or MDR. So that's the
Yeah. No, it's clear on this guidance. I read the guidance. I looked at it, and it's really advising you first to go to the guidance regarding classification of devices before maybe to go to that, just to clarify that yes, your product is really on scope of all this.
I've also read some critiques of these guidelines concerning nomenclature, and I think that actually that they were a bit unfair. I mean, it might make some people nervous because it introduces more steps for the clinical evaluation. So one now has to add like additional sub-steps, let's say, for the performance evaluation of the devices. But I don't think it is too bad, and in some cases it might really be useful what they propose. Let's go through it and let's see what can be done.
For people that are on the live, so we'll be having this presentation. If you have any questions, so please put that on the comments, and I will monitor a bit the comment area. And if I see something that is really relevant for Cesare, so I will ask him the question, and we'll see his answer. So it will be really live, so no preparation for the questions. We'll see if we can make it smooth.
Yeah, I also don't want really to speak of presentation. It's like more a diagram method that I created for us internally to discuss the thing, and I thought, okay, it works well. Let's use it also for a general presentation, but it's not like a PowerPoint presentation with words, and so it's really like the same diagram analyzed in different ways. Let's say so.
Yeah. So let's kick that off. Okay. So what are we starting with now?
So we are starting with where we left last time. So last time when we spoke about intended purpose, and as we said, that's the description of a medical problem that you want to solve. No, you say I want to create a device that given a patient with a problem and a user with certain skills and who uses a device in a certain way, then I want to build a device that achieves a certain type of claims, benefits for the patients. So
if I remember from what we discussed, so for people, if you want, you can go to the previous, the second previous LinkedIn Live or LinkedIn replay on my YouTube channel. We had this presentation made by Cesare Magri regarding the intended purpose, and we really went through all the steps to define and to implement your intended purpose. I really like this flow chart that we defined because it's really clear, if I can say. When before it was there was some discussion about intended purpose, intended use, intended user, etc. etc. Now we try to really to clarify that, and you can go to this workshop that we have made with Cesare on the YouTube channel. Yeah, I remember there is also some things to download from this. There was some charts or some documents to download. So if you want to go to make this exercise again by yourself, because I think today we'll not talk specifically about that. We'll try to skip that because for people that already saw the presentation, no need to go through that again.
We are not going so much into the details because this time we are also want to focus on the situation in which we have a solution to this problem. That would be the next slide, in which we say, okay, now we built a device, and this device takes some sort of input, processes this input, and gives an output. So the idea of this diagram is that it shows, like, let's say, the workflow of the use of a medical device. Now you have a patient. Let's say for some devices you might not have all these steps, but the general logic is that you have a patient, you have a user that can use this device on a patient, can get, I don't know, information from the patient, and then it feeds this information as input to the device. The device processes this input and generates an output. This output could be mere information, or it could really be a laser beam that cures something on the skin. What I didn't show here, because I thought it would become too complex, is that this output actually goes back to the user who applies it to the patient. I'm gonna skip that. I just here in this slide try to show it very fast in the as those small little blocks. But the idea is that, okay, once the output is brought back in some form to the patient, either in the form of a diagnosis or a treatment or whatever the device is doing, prediction, then you can promise that you are going to reach some claims, and this is your final these are the benefits that you claim are valid for your device. So this is a sort of the chain that describes the use of the medical device.
So what we have at the top is the problem that we are trying to solve, and on the bottom is the device, how the device is processing those information to solve the problem.
Exactly. And let's say that the arrows, they show how the information goes. So the information goes from the patient to the user. The user fits it to the device. You get the output, and this output, once it's brought back to the patient, it allows to achieve the claims. So this
here what we can do also is the fact that the user can be also the patient. It can be the same people that are doing the same.
Exactly. I was trying to split all parts. It might be that you don't have a user because the device is totally automatic. The user could be the patient. So it is not that you necessarily have to have all steps, but I mean, usually a patient, you must have it, output you will have, and also the claims, otherwise you're not a medical device. So this is at least the essence.
It's clear. Okay, then we are here on the medical device, pure, if I can say. In vitro diagnostic is the same.
Yes, so I just in the next slide I was just showing that only we can apply the same diagram also to in vitro diagnostic. The only essential difference that's for in vitro diagnostic devices, you also have to specify a sample. So you have a patient with a certain medical condition, and from this patient you take blood, for example, or urine sample, skin sample. So it's you remove something physical from the patient, and then you are dealing with an in vitro diagnostic device. If you are just gathering information from the patient, like you ask them how they feel, if there's certain symptoms, or you measure certain physiological parameters, then you are in the medical device domain. It's a subtle difference, but it makes a lot of difference from the normative point of view.
It's really clear, and it's really the definition of in vitro diagnostic. It's done in vitro, it's not done in vivo. So mainly we are trying to get some samples and then to use those samples to check if the product is I mean, to check if our claims are really valid for that. So this is mainly the big picture in terms of the processes or the workflow that we have to do. Now, this guideline is breaking down all this. It's really providing you some specific things to do.
Let's say the MDR, MDD method, they generically speak of performance evaluation. So you have to show that your device achieves the performance that you intend, and it sort of ends there. But this guideline goes a step farther, and they identify like 3 steps for the performance evaluation. And they say, or they also specify that you should do in your clinical evaluation, you should, in theory, according to their diagram, do these 3 steps in an order. And so I wanted to try to use this diagram to highlight these steps. So also it was for me to make them clear, and I hope that it helps making this concept more concrete. So the first step is what they call the valid clinical association and scientific validity. So for medical devices, so MDR, you have to use the term valid clinical association. For in vitro diagnostic, oh God, I really get IVDR. Sorry, I always do that wrong. You have to use the term scientific validity, and that's because in the MDR, scientific validity already has a definition, which is not what is actually in this guideline, which is just a generic description of the process of systematically collecting evidence scientifically for demonstrating the clinical validation, the clinical validity of your device. Here, they're really instead they want to focus on a specific part of the chain that you have to validate, and they introduce this term valid clinical association so that you don't have this conflict.
So if I hear somewhere valid clinical association, I will. It is associated to a medical device software. Is it correct?
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing that prevents from using now this structure also for non-software devices or predominantly hardware devices. Actually, what we did in our template, now we have this structure in there. If it's not a medical software device necessarily, we think whether actually it's in any case useful to have this dichotomy, to have this distinction between the validation steps. And I mean, there is nothing forbidding to use it also for a non-medical for a non-software device. Just for the in the performance evaluation of the in vitro diagnostic, you have to use the term scientific validity. It's like a chapter of the performance evaluation report.
Okay, so here we have the same structure. At the top, it's more the problem, and at the bottom, it's how our device is solving the situation or getting the information that we need. And what we need from our software of our solution is just the outputs.
Exactly. So as you see, the user has disappeared, and the mechanism by which you reach the output have disappeared. So it's a sort of let's say abstract position in which you say, okay, suppose that I were able to extract this output from my patient information or from my patient data. It does these two things. Does it relate to the medical condition of the patient, first of all? And is it related to the claims, or at least to part of the claims that I have? For example, suppose that I have a medical software that analyzes pictures, and it's I don't know, I take a picture of the skin, and from this picture it can measure some sort of blood pressure parameter. I mean, I don't know, you measure the redness of the skin, and it can say something about blood pressure. I'm making a totally abstract example. Then you could say, okay, this blood pressure allows me to say something about the stage of diabetes. So
So we are not talking about the redness. We are not talking about the method. We are not talking about the process or the inputs that we do. We just say, because I get this blood pressure, then I can can claim this or claim that. So
here you have to show that if in diabetic patients, blood pressure is related to the stage of the disease. You don't have to show that how you get to this blood pressure, that it works. You just have to show that this output has some relationship to the claims that you want to achieve for the patient that you have foreseen. So, and it requires like a bit of an abstraction. In some cases, I've seen often manufacturer, sometimes they stop here, and that's all they do. And this is actually only one part also of the clinical evaluation. And instead, so it's really one step, and also it might not be that it covers all claims. For example, with this device with blood pressure, it could be that you on a side you claim that you can say something about the stage of the disease, but you might also say that by knowing this information, you can reduce a patient mortality by 10%, something like this. So maybe there is nothing in the literature, or it's that supports this claim with the 10% mortality rate reduction, but you can start to show that there is a link between the indication, the output, and the claim. And so, and if there is absolutely no link, then okay, the question is, why are you computing this quantity in the first place?
So if I am a manufacturer, if I can say, of a medical device or software, and I don't have a software for now, I want to claim something with my software. I mean, I will build my software, but I want to claim something. Should I do this exercise before even to start to build the software?
Yes,
because I think it's clear now that you should prove that anyway, and you don't need a specific software or process to do that.
Yes, that's exactly the point. You can start doing it even before you have any type of implementation. That should be in the first steps of the clinical evaluation. Often it just happens that the manufacturer they know already that there is this link, so this step occurs like let's say in the background for them. But in theory, the best thing would be to first document this step. Also, because by doing that, you might realize that you might have to do your product things in a certain way, and you realize it before. You might identify risks that you would not have identified before doing this sort of literature search, and you might really understand better how you're going to do the rest of the clinical evaluation or usability. That's also.
So it's great because it's aligned also with what we have done on the previous exercise relating to the intended purpose. It's good also to do the intended purpose exercise before even to start to develop everything, because you have kind of your scope, you have all the elements that you need to prove or not, and then from there you can say, to prove that I need to do that, to prove that I need to do that, etc., etc. So it's really exactly the same alignment. I mean, we are really aligned that, and it's why we really advise to people, before really to have your products finalized, even before to start it, you should really do this exercise, this workshop of defining the intended purpose, defining the outputs, defining all this, so that you are really at the end providing the device that is really answering the claims, if I can say.
The earlier the better, and we really have experience when that was done early at a huge impact on the whole development. Unfortunately, often it gets done at last. So
yeah, I know.
and that's a pity that you cannot, you don't have so much freedom anymore. But when possible, do it really as the first thing, because once that's the information that you need for the classification, for deciding the how you have to certify your product, how you have to verify it, to validate it, everything. So it's really the essential steps.
So just as an anecdote, I had a client we worked on. I mean, he came to me late, if I can say, because he wanted to know how I can submit these products, but it was for the US market. And we talked about the intended purpose, and we talked about all those things and what he has to do, etc., etc., to define what kind of submission he can do on the market. And when I told him that if you had done the intended purpose previously at the beginning, it would have really guide you to more simple submission than now, where it has to go to a higher kind of submission. So it's really real life examples. So please do that before, and not waiting that you arrive to the end. I mean, I know that some companies are already designing products, already designing softwares, and then at the end they are contacting a regulatory affairs expert, and they ask him, now I have my software, what should I do?
Yeah.
And then we are starting to say, you have to come back to this step because you missed this, you have to come back to this step, etc., etc. So it's really a painful exercise. So please.
And the cool thing of the intended purpose is also regulatory independence. So it works for Europe, it works for USA. That the kind of information you need for any device, independently of where you're gonna put it on the market. So it's really
it's clear. So I hope people are listening. So just looking at the comments, no, there is no comments. Hello, Irfan from Dubai. Hello, Rajay from Singapore. Hello, Sashi from India. So thank you for joining. So yeah, don't hesitate if there is something that is not really clear on what we are saying, because I mean, we know the topic, we know a bit of what we are talking about. So if there is something that is not clear, please don't hesitate to provide some comments. Okay, so now I have.
Sorry.
Now I have my valid clinical association, or my scientific validity.
I thought that we could also make a small example with in vitro diagnostic, because it works really well in that case. So let's say that you have some substance from urine, and then you say that by measuring this substance in patient again with diabetes, it's important to know something about the disease. So in this case, you don't care about your doing this, the way you're doing this measurement. It might be a complex machine, it might be a simple strip, it might be a DNA testing, I don't know, but you're just going to show that there is this link between this substance that you're going to measure from this patient with this indication and the claims that you have about your product.
Said it's
Okay.
really the sample that we'll use. You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, sorry, I thought we disconnected. So here.
Oh, I think there is a problem with the line now.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
can you hear
now
me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, how's Monir? I hope he comes back soon.
Hello, you're back. Okay, I'm back. Okay.
Hi.
Sorry. As I said, yeah, the network seems to not work optimally. I hope. I think it's because of the lockdown. Everybody is from home and trying to
streaming.
Exactly, streaming or I don't know. So, but yeah, let's see if it's working. So sorry. As we said on the live, there is still always some kind of technical issues, but we'll solve that. Okay, let's continue. So here we've given one example for in vitro diagnostic, and we said that mainly we get some samples to define what are the outputs that we need from this sample to perform our claims. Okay, next step now.
Next step is what people already somehow know as sometimes also as verification. So it's you build your product, you have to show that your device work as according to specification, especially related to the input output. To test it, you might not necessarily need a patient. For example, suppose that you measure the color from urine strips, then you just have to show that once you give a strip that's yellow, that your device measures yellow, and or if in the case of the app that was analyzing the image, that if you give a color of the skin that's red, something that's red, then that you get a certain blood pressure. So you might have a database, you might create fake input for your device, and you check that actually the output is consistent with the input. It's not that you give once the input and you get an output and then the second times it changed. And this can be done by a tester, for example. You don't need necessarily either the user or the patient. So here,
so there is here we say it's like a lab test, so we can do that internally, or we can do that with a laboratory, or we can do that. There is no need of specific. It's like simulation. It's really a simulation.
Yes, and so this is typically done in the verification process. What we would do in the clinical evaluation, we would try to summarize it from the test report. So you can simply reference the test reports and make a summary of them, and this should already be well covered by the system verification, let's say so.
Okay. Here we have also the development of a software. There is this kind of V-shape for development of software. Any software should go through that. So here we are really talking about this verification and validation process for software from beginning to the end, to prove that our software is really designed to do what we ask him to do, to perform
what you would refer to are not the low-level tests, like I don't know, the module tests. That's not what's going to be interesting. But if you do some sort of system test with your software, you probably are going to have the reports there that you can use also in the clinical evaluation, so you can reference them.
And there is no difference between MDR and IVDR.
Well, obviously the device is going to be different, but in both cases you can use them. Yeah.
So here the terms technical performance for MDR, analytical performance for
Sorry.
IVDR.
Yeah, sure. So for a IVD, it's analytical performance. For MDR, it's technical performance. So
for me,
again,
I will have chosen the same name, technical performance, for both. I don't know why they split that in two different names.
Well, it comes from also from there was this problem of the conflicts. Plus, it's also terminology that got taken from the what's it called? Sorry, I don't get the name. Also from the other guidelines. I'm missing.
IMDRF or
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it was a nomenclature that was used already, and I think also they might have noticed. Some people have complained about the fact that in this guideline you speak of scientific validity when in the MDR it's another name, and I think they wanted to avoid this conflict and also use the double terminology, and also this process for the IVDR. It was this splitting is really in the IVDR inside, while you don't have it in the MDR. So the terminology for the IVDR was already there, and they had to add that for the MDR, so it doesn't conflict also.
Okay, great. So after technical performance or analytical performance, what should we do?
Yes, we have the complete. I wanted to show that, for example, here with this diagram, you can also show the usability validation. This is not in this guideline. It was just to make an example of how you can use this type of chain thinking. You could think of the usability validation as the case in which you have a user with the device, but you don't have a patient, and you're not interested in whether the device achieves its claim, only on whether the user is able to give the input properly, to read the output properly, and to handle the device, whether it works. So here you can really also show this usability part, and usability is also in any case an important part of the clinical evaluation. It has to work, because otherwise your device would not be clinically valid in any case.
So what we are doing usually with an usability test is we are providing the device to the person with maybe the instruction for use, and ask them to process as instructed. And we see if there is any mistake done or if there is any issue, so that we can also update our instruction for use or our method, so that we are sure that the intended user is really processing as asked, because if he's not doing that correctly, maybe the output will not be correct also. So it's really something that
suppose that the user is a doctor who has to input information about the patient, and you can just give information about the theoretical patient and describe it, and see whether the doctor inputs this input correctly. So maybe it's the interface is hard to use, or it's unclear, or the questions are formulated in such a way that they are not clear, and the input might be inserted wrongly, or there is instruction on what to do then in certain cases with the patient when the patient has certain symptoms, but the user, the doctor, cannot understand what is coming out. So you can ask them about their interpretation of the output of the app, and if it matches what actually it should have been, or they can give you feedback of how they find it, and so on. This in form of these formulars, how you call them?
Survey or
surveys, exactly. So in which you at the end you rate everything. But here you're not checking whether your app allows to reduce mortality, or whether it really works with the actual patient. You are just thinking of the usability part of the user.
Yeah.
And here you can really show it by taking out the patient and the claims in this diagram.
Yeah, that's clear.
But this is not in the guideline. That I wanted to say just.
Okay, so it's a special bonus from Cesare Magri here. Great. Okay, next step is.
And the next and final step is the VAUD chain. So you might have worked out a device that has a valid clinical association, so in which the output makes sense for the for the type of claim that you have and for the type of indication that you have. You might work out the development specification correctly. So technically, you have developed the product correctly. Maybe the device is also still well usable, but the whole thing doesn't allow you to really reach all the claims that you have, or it doesn't allow when you start working on it really on a real patient in the setting that you thought. I mean, maybe it's something. I mean, maybe something that it would have worked well at home, but it doesn't work in hospital. Something like this.
So it's really that we created some. It's here a puzzle. So we worked on a certain part, we work on a second part, we worked on a third part, and here we have to assemble everything and check that it's working together, because we never check that together. So here it's really the objective here.
The more you work on a subpart, the more likely it is that the whole thing at the end is also going to work together, but it's not a guarantee. So the requirement is also that one it's on the whole product. So it's on testing the whole thing. Or, for example, you might have that through the clinical association, you can say, okay, sure, this quantity, this chemical quantity in the sample, or this feature that I extract from the skin color, it has some relevance for the disease, but you haven't shown that your device actually reduces death rate by 10%. And that is something that you can do in a clinical tests with certain patients, and in which you compare to the case in which your device is not being used. Often, I mean, what I know is that often this kind of claim, like the one I mentioned now, they are really like implicit in the claims that the manufacturer do. Often it's the case that the manufacturer don't dare to make them explicit, but it's everywhere implicit in all that they say about the device, and also in the way they formulate the claim. For example, if you say that your device supports by assessing or monitoring a therapy, or by generating a therapy, what you actually want to say is that in the end, your therapy is going to be more successful than when you don't use your device. And often it's the case that the manufacturer, they don't dare to formulate the claim in this way. They go with the first version, which is, okay, we help by the therapy, but actually a claim that is formulated for the MDR, for IVDR, it's always a claim. It's in terms of effects on the patient. So the correct claim would be patient who are treated using this device get better faster, or die less, or have a better quality of life. So it's something that you can quantify on patients. And in theory, you should check also this kind of implicit claims that you have. And in the best case, you should really formulate them explicitly. And often for this type of claims, it's not enough to show the scientific validity. You really need data. Depending on the risk class of your device, and also in some examples of here in the guideline, it might be that this type of claim, if you have the risk under control, that you can verify them also when the device is validate them also when the device is in the market, for example. That helps often a lot, because you have more access to patients and also to money for the manufacturer. But it's important to identify this claim and to think of this chain, and to say, okay, I am at this steps of the clinical validation. What is missing, and what should I do now? Is this something that I can do in a very risk control way once the product is ready on the market? No. Do I need the data before? Should I remove this claim? What does it mean for me?
Okay, and can we say also that benefit risk is also constant to look at here, and to check that it's really not impacting any benefit risk for the patient?
So benefit risk, it's one of the points of the clinical validation, of the 4 main points. So we have performance, safety, side effects. So the performance, we have to check that the device achieves the performance that we claim. risks that we have identified, or risks through our risk analysis that are known, side effects that whether there are, and that we have identified the side effects, and the final point is benefit risk analysis. So you compare the performance to the risk and the side effects, and you decide whether that's enough, this ratio is enough for bringing the device into the market. You might have a device that does very little, but there's also practically no risks, and then you could say, okay, I can still bring it into the market. Or you might have a device that does little and have huge risks, and then in that case you would say, okay, either I validate it very strongly and show that actually the risks are under control, or it's not worth bringing this device into the market.
Okay, and in terms of clinical performance, so I suppose it's also dependent on the classification, but can I use also clinical data that were coming from literature to test my device and to say that it's performing correctly, or should I always have a clinical investigation with real patients?
No, you don't always need clinical investigation with real patients. So the idea is that you need clinical data, and you can borrow this data. So as long as the principle of operation match. So let's say that there are papers out there that collect and evaluate data that have been processed with the same algorithm that you use. For example, we're speaking about software. Typically, it's algorithm, score, this kind of things. If that matches, you can practically take your those data as if they were yours, and use it for the clinical evaluation of your product. There, okay, now with software is not so much the case, but there are also devices where you cannot really perform tests directly on patients, because that would be too dangerous. And in that case, you can use dummies or animals. That's also the case. Those are not clinical data, but I mean, they can be used for the clinical evaluation of your device.
Okay. No, I think it's great. I think it's providing really all the information now for building that. What I would propose is to go through a concrete example that is coming also from the MDCG 2020 -1. Let me check quickly.
I must say that probably the examples are the weakest part of the guideline, because they are not super specific in what they claim, but I mean, we can go through them. So let's see how much we can say.
So I have the first example here, which is a medical device software intended to analyze sleep quality data. So apparently this is a software that is taking into account the accelerometer and microphone data to determine quality of sleep. So I suppose it's those devices that are trying to track patients that have kind of sleep apnea or something like that. So people that are stopping to breathe, if I can say, at a certain time. So here it's mainly what is the software for. So they are claiming that it determines the quality of sleep. We'll make it a bit bigger, maybe. It determines the quality of sleep that impacts the general well-being. So here we say mainly that if we are sleeping well, we are better, we are feeling better. And the device is, the objective of the device is to monitor the quality of sleep in patients with sleep disorders such as sleep apnea. So using the sensor of the device, and we estimate the expected success rate of CPAP therapy. So I think this is mainly the different claims that they are putting. So it's mainly what you had on your diagram at the end.
I mean, a couple of comments here. So first of all, they really think about a mobile app here. So you have an app that has access to the sensor of your mobile device. Because I mean, if you had a device with a specific device with the Microsoft, with the microphone and the accelerometer, then I mean that would be essentially a medical device in the sense of hardware as well, with the software integrated. So here they really think of an app that's running on on a mobile device. What I'm not too extremely fond here is that their claims actually they are not formulated in the way that MEDDEV suggests. So with the quantifiability and so on, they are a bit blurred in the formulation, and so that's why I'm not super fond of them. But essentially, what they're saying is that you can establish a relationship between these quantities that are in this data that are recorded from the mobile and the quality of sleep. That's the thing. And what in your scientific validity, you would have to show that in the valid clinical association, sorry, it's not a IVD device, it's a medical device. You would have to show that there is a relationship between these signals or parameters that you can extract from these signals and the quality, how well the patient has slept. And additionally, that there is a relationship between these parameters and the ability of predicting the success rate of this continuous positive airwave pressure therapy, the CPAP.
So what is interesting here is that on the valid clinical association, what they are doing is that they tell what is well established and they tell what is not well established. So mainly, I think this is the part that they will have really to work on to get that. And it's why here what they have mentioned is that the valid clinical association has not been established without gaps for prediction of success of CPAP therapy, which requires generation of missing clinical data. So it means that they see that there is a gap, and they will generate those data to fill this gap. And then we have at the end the technical performance, where it's what we discussed. It's verification and validation tests that they are doing.
Yes, they are not saying much more. Confirm with verification and validation tests that the app can reliably and reproducibly calculate sleep quality scorings, and confirm compatibility between the medical device software and the device equipped with a sensor to ensure data can be utilized in the intended way. So it's, I mean, you have to show that if you have a certain, I mean, it might be that your software is using neural network, so it's not something deterministic. You want to really show that for a certain type of input, you get a reliable result, and that this input fits with I don't know what has been established by a doctor or by another algorithm or a publication, so that this value is correct, that you get from this fixed sample or data set.
Okay, so here we have, if I can say, defined the valid clinical association. We have done the technical, I mean, they have to do the technical performance. And at the end, we have the clinical performance that they are talking about. Here we have two things. We have the usability assessment that they have to do for this device. And it's what we talked about maybe before. It's the retrospective study. So on previously obtained data to confirm the success. So they are using data. I mean, it's just an example. So I don't think I don't know if it's really a real life thing.
Well, it might be
to use real.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that for the type of claims that you have for your device, you cannot do like it doesn't really make sense to do a randomized clinical trials with a control group. I mean, actually, you just have to show that you can produce a certain specific output. There is already an established data set for doing that. You test it on the established data set, and that's fine, because usually the claims where you need a control group is when you compare to something else. In this case, you're not claiming that your output is better than something else, or that the patient is going to feel better. For example, this is not a part of the claim. I think it's a bit implicit there. They have something like this, but it's not explicitly formulated here.
Okay. In terms of just a second. In terms of this example, so here I just listed the other examples that they have mentioned. So if you want to go to the MDCG guideline 2020-1, there is also examples on intended for image segmentation, intended to detect inflammatory bowel disease, active device containing medical device software to enable their intended purpose, medical device software which provides an additional user interface to control an insulin pump, medical device software intended to analyze exhaled CO2 in a live sustaining device in order to control ventilator settings. So they are talking specifically, I mean, they are providing some examples, but yeah, when you look at those examples, they are not extensive. So you have really to fill really the gaps there, to provide more data, to provide smart indicators. As we said at the beginning, that the claims should be really clear and understandable by everybody and not just approximative. Do you have maybe an example that we can do here live about another device? Maybe I think we talked, when we prepared that, we talked something about coronavirus. So maybe as it's really something that everybody's talking about, I don't know if this one is a good example or if we have another one.
Yeah, I think we covered it a bit. We could do something with coronavirus. It's similar with blood detection. You might have a device that gather some parameters from your patient, and it allows you to predict the risk that you get really sick from coronavirus, something like this. That could be it's an actual topic, and then you could claim that with this information you are able to save lives, a huge number of lives. So the first thing that you have to do technically is to assess whether there is really a relationship between these parameters that you want to collect. It might be you say, okay, I take a picture of the face, and I tell you how likely is that you are in the risk group of coronavirus. You could do it. I mean, one of the parameters is age, that you could detect, for example, already from a picture. And actually, you could show that there are data that show that for older people or people with severe obesity or something like that brings them into the higher risk class of coronavirus. And then there you cover part of the of your claims, and technically you would have to show that you are able to detect age and weight from a picture of the patient, and that you don't need a patient with coronavirus or not. You just can do it with any type of picture. So you're not working clinically, you're just working technically. You can gather a data set in which you show that, okay, I can reliably detect approximately the class of age of the patient and their weight, and then the final thing would be, okay, I put everything together, I use it with patients, and I really in the end check that, I don't know, the patient that use my device have a less mortality rate than the patient who didn't have this information, because the software made them aware of the risk and they took action, for example. That's something that you could test. That would be the final clinical performance validation that you do.
Okay, so I think here we have really all the steps, and you have really then to use that this pathway, if I can say, to be able to place your device on the market. During an audit, they will really look at all those things, if I can say. They will really look at all those elements. The auditor can really check that specifically and ask you for technical performance, for clinical performance, for valid clinical association, etc.
So I don't know now how fast the notification body are gonna take implement this guideline into their processes. Usually it takes some time. So between guidelines, because it's not laws, so it's not compulsory. It's a strong advice, let's say so. And usually they use it, but there is some delay. So probably they're not gonna ask about it in the next months, but I guess there's going to be a point at which they're going to ask about it. And I think that in general there is nothing that forbids to use this structure for any type of device. It might be that, okay, you can say for this type of device it doesn't make sense yet to speak about scientific validity, and you can remove the point. But it's a useful structure that might help in general in structuring the clinical evaluation of the product. So I think it's not doesn't hurt, let's say so.
Okay. Okay, so looking at the comments, I have so Rashid from Morocco. Hi, Rahul from India. So Atem is asking a question. I think it's a general question because here it's more about every device, I suppose. But what is the method used to conclude the benefit-risk ratio? It's something that is, as I said, general, but there is no, for me, in my knowledge, there is no specific method existing. You have to build it. So
you have to build your method. So the idea is try to build it so that it's as systematic as possible, and so at least that's what we try to do. So really try to systematize and through a series of questions, I don't know, that you have to answer, or a quantification, and so that it becomes automatically more you get more trustable. Often I see them written as generic sentences. Yeah, we think we think the risk is low and the benefit is great, and that ends there. I think if you want to have it been taken seriously, then try to systematize the questions, for example, and have a systematic approach, because that's gonna help. Also, it's gonna take you away loads of stress when you have to do it, because the method is there, and you're not gonna be in the situation, oh, now what do I have to write here? I don't know how to fill these paragraphs. You have a series of steps, and you just go through them, and you get an answer. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, so some mistake I see also with some of the clinical evaluation I've seen is they are not clearly mentioning the benefits. They are really talking a lot about the risk, residual risk from the risk management file, etc. But they are not putting really in balance the benefits. I have, for example, some of the clinical evaluation who I work with is mainly on dialysis, and the thing is that if you don't use the machine, you can die. So it's not like there is the benefit is that it's life-threatening, so you have to have it. What is in the balance is the risk maybe of contamination, is the risk of this, risk of that, but how can I reduce this risk? And then I define all the things that I do to reduce the risk. So it's not something that's, I mean, the method is not something that is reproducible maybe for every product, but you have really to define the method that is really fitting your products specifically.
And what you said, it fits nicely with the fact that sometimes the information by the manufacturer it lies in the air. Let's say so everyone think it's obvious, but it's not automatically clear for someone that's coming from outside. And the auditors, I mean, those who prove things, they are external, so they're not coming from the company. They don't breathe this air in which some information is instilled automatically. And so please always try to formulate everything openly, so that it's clear, and that builds trust also with the notifying body, and makes the whole process much easier. It's
yeah. So Atem is saying that there is methods that are used in the pharmacology industry, and yes, there is. But here on the medical device, there is no specific law or specific method that all the auditors are looking to see. If you want to use the one from the pharmacology industry, you can, as soon as it's really fitting your products and your need.
There is one from FDA. Device. There are some guidelines on FDA on how to do it. It might be that it doesn't always fit or work well. So it's relatively structured. It's okay. It's not fantastic, but it can be used. For example, that's.
I mean, it's better than having nothing, or than putting a sentence that nobody really understands.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have Navin that is asking, what about security of that software? How it is validated? Do we have any section to show it is hack proof? What about cancer finding using X-rays, using AI, etc.? So I think there is a lot of things here, but yeah, I think it's more about cyber security for your software.
Cyber security, you're gonna cover it in the verification. It's not something that clinical is something where you need a patient. So cyber security, you don't need a patient to test it. So it's automatically not clinical. It's important for the patient, but you don't need a patient to test it, and you don't need to test the effect on the patient. So it's something that you can cover in the technical documentation and in your technical verification.
Okay.
But it needs to be taken into account, especially with the GDPR and
yeah. Good. Okay, so thank you, Atem, for all that. Thank you, Navin, for the questions. So I have no more questions. So I think we have made our job here to help the people to understand this guidance. Don't hesitate to review this video on the replay. I will put the replay next week. With the presentation and with also the map that I just built, I just showed you, so that you can also get it and maybe make your own analysis. Don't hesitate also to contact us if you have any question. I'll try really to answer as much question as possible. And if you have any requests for clinical support, so Cesare will be here to help you with Beyond Clinical. Okay, Cesare.
Thank you very much. I hope that it was useful, and I hope that people will use this information. And I look forward to feedback, and contact me for any question.
Okay, good.
Have a nice evening.
So thank you, everybody, and have a nice weekend. And talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.